Dragon Ball Heroes. Dragon Ball Heroes is essentially the closest thing we've ever gotten to real-life, official Dragon Ball fanfiction. Starting nearly 15 years ago now, the massive sprawling narrative of Dragon Ball Heroes card game, promotional anime, and manga have been going on for literally longer than the entirety of Dragon Ball Super. With its long history and a legacy for having crazy what-if scenarios like Golden Cooler and Super Saiyan 4 Limit Breaker Broly, it is probably best known for having arguably the two strongest versions of Goku to ever exist. When it comes to officially released Dragon Ball material, pretty much no one compares to these two versions of Son Goku in power. But how strong are they actually? Today, I hope to answer that question. How strong is Goku in Dragon Ball Heroes? If you do like this kind of stuff, please make sure to like and subscribe, and let's jump right in. Part 1. Canon. Now, firstly, it's important to establish what is canon to the story of Dragon Ball Heroes. After all, there are numerous games, manga, promotional animations, and other guides that are all contributing to the incredibly convoluted narrative, with plenty of contradictions throughout. So today, I'm going to mostly be focusing on the power scaling of the Dragon Ball Heroes manga series, due in part because I haven't seen many people talk about it, and because it is often able to go into more detail about certain aspects of the universe while covering essentially identical events to the games and promotional anime. Still, I will be using other sources as supporting material when there isn't enough information to go off of to fill the gaps where they matter. For those familiar with Dragon Ball Heroes, you may be aware that within the franchise and its narrative, there are essentially two different continuities: pre-God Mission and post-God Mission. You see, in the first 5 years or so of Dragon Ball Heroes, the overall narrative of the game was a bit meta and disconnected, as it was really only told through brief trailers and then the self-contained events within the game. Generally, it was about a boy named Beat playing a game called Dragon Ball Heroes, literally becoming a part of the narrative as his own created character. If you've ever seen early ads for Dragon Ball Heroes before the full promotional anime began, you see a lot of recognizable faces until suddenly this random kid would show up and fight alongside Goku. That's Beat. Originally, most of the scaling of Dragon Ball Heroes came from this meta-narrative. You see, the initial story of Dragon Ball Heroes was that the villains were getting enough power to eventually take over the so-called real world, supposedly transcending their status as video game characters and interacting with a higher dimensional plane, and to some arguably makes them boundless. But this isn't true. The so-called real world in this early era of Dragon Ball Heroes is actually just one of the many future timelines that exist, meaning that it's not a higher dimensional plane or anything like that. Regardless though, this is no longer the main continuity of Dragon Ball Heroes anyway, so even if it did have that kind of scaling, it's no longer all that relevant to the current franchise as it is now. Still though, Beat and his supporting cast still make appearances in the opening trailers for the game, but it's more so as a vessel to represent the player playing the actual game, as the narrative essentially functions without them, as I'll explain right now. Starting around 2016, Dragon Ball Heroes began focusing on creating a streamlined, continuous narrative that no longer acknowledged that it was actually a video game. They soft reset the franchise with the first chapter of the new Dragon Ball Heroes manga, starting with the origin story of Trunks joining the Time Patrol and essentially continuously going forward to today, where the current arc of Dragon Ball Heroes just finished its promo anime with MUI Goku defeating Majin Zoto. But I'm getting way too ahead of myself. Regardless, what you need to understand is that this second continuity is what I'm talking about when I say Dragon Ball Heroes. Still though, while the games, anime, manga generally all follow the same order of events, there are some very notable differences at times. But I assure you that ultimately it will not change anything. But just for an example, the fight between Xeno Goku, Broly, and Mira happens in separate locations, but stuff like this ultimately doesn't change how strong these characters ultimately are. With all that understood, we can now finally answer the most basic question. Who is Heroes Goku? Well, there's two, actually. The first Goku in Heroes that we meet is known as Xeno Goku. In this new-ish continuity, he is quite literally created from Trunks' imagination, trying to think of the strongest person he could to protect space-time. In execution, he's exactly the same as before, seeming to be an alternate version of GT Goku, having an adult body and the capacity to transform into Super Saiyan 4, as well as various power-ups to this form. Of course, eventually, numerous other Xeno versions of popular characters join in, including Gohan and Vegeta, as well as the obvious obvious Vegito and Gogeta down the line as well. The other, and arguably even more prominent Goku, who by official material is just called Goku, is referred to by many fans as either Heroes Goku or Capsule Corp Goku, due to the logo on his gi. If Xeno Goku is meant to be GT Goku, then this one is clearly Super Goku, as he uses forms from the series and clearly has a history that goes as far as at least the Tournament of Power, if not beyond it. With that comes every transformation from Super Saiyan God all the way to Mastered Ultra Instinct, as well as some other Heroes exclusive forms that we'll talk about later. This version of Goku does not make an appearance in the first arc, but since the Prison Planet arc, he's essentially become the main character of the story, having most of the prominent moments and fights throughout the arcs that he's been in so far. The reason this video's title doesn't specify which one we're talking about is because their scaling is essentially the same. Very recently, the two of them have fought each other, and it's clearly shown that they're equals in base, and essentially every transformation they have is equivalent. The only reason Capsule Corp Goku actually beat Xeno Goku is because he has one further transformation of Mastered Ultra Instinct, which let him beat Xeno Goku while using Limit Breaker Super Saiyan 4. Aside from temporary amps and feats achieved outside of Mastered Ultra Instinct, Xeno Goku and Capsule Corp Goku should generally be capable of doing the exact same stuff. Plus, Mastered Ultra Instinct isn't so absolutely overpowered that it puts Goku into an entirely different power scaling tier compared to Xeno Goku. Speaking of scaling tier, let's get into it. Part 3. The Power of Heroes Goku. The single most impressive feat that happens in all of Dragon Ball Heroes actually happens within the first arc of the manga, when the Demon King Mechikabura achieves his true form and completely absorbs all of Dragon Ball's history, plunging literally everything besides a small rock into a void of complete nothingness. By definition, this feat means Mechikabura's powers were capable of absorbing or destroying every timeline, every universe, the Time Nest, the Crack of Time, and every other side dimension that exists in Dragon Ball's cosmology multiple times over. But how actually strong is this feat? Firstly, we need to establish how many timelines there actually are in the Heroes cosmology and what it actually means to be a timeline. And we'll go from the lowest to highest end interpretations. At the absolute lowest, we know that there are at least several hundred timelines, as the Crimson Warrior in Black, an alternate version of Goku Black, had killed 99 Gokus from across different timelines, and there are many other Gokus that he obviously didn't kill. Several hundred is a lot, but ultimately doesn't sound that impressive. Thankfully, as a mid-end, we know that there are at least 76,434,925,761 timelines in Dragon Ball Heroes, as during the Super Space-Time Tournament, we learned that CC Goku's timeline is that number timeline. We can do better than that though, as there are many statements across the franchise that imply there are many more timelines. The manga claims that there is a countless number of timelines. Games like Xenoverse that introduced the Crack of Time, which has been since shown in the Dragon Ball Heroes manga, explains that there is an infinite amount of time and timelines that exist at any one moment. We know from mainline Dragon Ball Super that by creating new timelines, it's not just recreating one universe, but fully creating a brand new multiverse with all 12 universes in it, as well as each Dragon Ball universe having its own cosmology that in itself contains multiple universe-sized structures within it from the otherworld to hell. This means that even destroying or absorbing one timeline would already justify a low multiverse level of power. Taking both the low and mid-end interpretations would put Mechikabura's feat at multiversal level, while the high end puts him at either multiversal plus or low complex multiversal. If you want that in like dimensional terms, each individual Dragon Ball universe should be fourth dimensional on principle, as it contains arguably infinite 3D size spaces, with each timeline arguably then encompassing each of these 4D structures, putting it at either infinite 4D or, as some people argue, fifth dimensional hypertime. But I'll be honest, I don't know metaphysics that well, so I'll leave you guys to ultimately decide. Regardless of this, Mechikabura is able to destroy an infinite number of these timelines, completely encompass them, and even absorb objects and spaces that view and treat these timelines as essentially two-dimensional objects. This, I think, clearly puts him at either infinite 5D in power or within the sixth dimensional tier of power. I personally don't really believe in any arguments for there being higher than 4D spaces within the main universe structure of Dragon Ball, but if you want to say that because of Cooler's instant transmission or something, that there are higher dimensional spaces within said timelines, then you can just increase the dimensional tier by 1 once we get to the end of the video. More importantly though, how does this scale to Heroes Goku? Well, right after doing the previous mentioned feat, Xeno Vegito is able to fight evenly with Mechikabura, and the only reason he can't win is because the Demon Demon King has an infinite capacity to regenerate. Eventually though, a convoluted combination of several abilities are able to defeat Mechikabura and seal him away, and by the next arc, his level of power is immediately being surpassed. Cumber, the evil Saiyan, who appears during the Prison Planet arc, is able to match Xeno Vegito easily, and outright overpower him when using his basic Saiyan transformations, only for Mastered Ultra Instinct Goku, as well as the weakest form of Fu, to essentially effortlessly one-shot him, arguably putting their power casually hundreds of times beyond Mechikabura's tier of power. Goku then trains with the Grand Priest to the point where he can thrash Cumber while only using Ultra Instinct Sign, and fight evenly with him in Super Saiyan Blue. At this point, the power levels begin to escalate to insane levels. Hearts then absorbs the Universe Seed, an item stated to be able to destroy everything, objectively putting him over the power of Mechikabura's best feat, and yet Gogeta Blue is able to easily beat him. Then, in the next arc, Fu, who could one-shot the strongest form of Cumber, becomes amped with the power of Mechikabura, being outright stated to be stronger than him and Hearts. He then fuses with Toki Toki's evil copy, with Toki Toki controlling all of time, maintaining all dimensions, and being the guy who would restore the timelines after Mechikabura absorbed them. And it's here when just Xeno Goku and Capsule Corp Goku team up, fusing their ki together to surpass their strength as a fusion, and outright overpower this version of Fu, who has drastically exceeded the power of Mechikabura's original strength. However, Fu then becomes amped by the power of the Universe Tree, a fully grown version of the seed that had already caused Hearts to be on Mechikabura's tier. But Goku gains and absorbs some of the power of the Universe Tree as well, and in a single attack absolutely annihilates it and completely overpowers Fu, who has the power of 3 different beings capable of destroying infinite timelines. This is stated to also be the true power of the Universe Tree, so clearly it surpasses everything that has come before. Not to be outdone, during the Space-Time Tournament arc, it's stated to be an even bigger crisis than the God Tree and Fu. This can be implied to be the tournament, or the final opponent of the arc, Demigra, who becomes the new Demon King. This version of Demigra is eventually defeated by MUI Goku teaming up with Xeno Bardock and an alternate version of future Gohan. This means that now, without a God Tree amp and a little assistance, Goku can overpower and defeat someone stronger than Fu from the previous arc. After this, Xeno and CC Goku fight, with only MUI being what can overpower Xeno, with both of them agreeing that they still have a lot of room to grow. So, that was a lot. To summarize most simply, Mechikabura, the person with the best feat in the verse, gets surpassed multiple times by heroes and villains alike, to the point where he'd probably only be considered weak and obsolete compared to pretty much anyone relevant, and would definitely lose to both versions of Goku, Xeno, or Capsule Corp. Part 4. Conclusion. Xeno and Capsule Corp Goku are easily at the bare minimum infinite 5D in power, with their strength pretty clearly and massively exceeding the strength of 60 characters by anywhere from dozens to maybe even beyond millions of times, depending on where you want to apply multipliers. This level of strength, speed is essentially irrelevant and immeasurable. They are stronger than characters who can travel through time with sheer speed, and their attacks can travel throughout time by definition if they're encompassing timelines. I think it's very clear that these are the strongest versions of Goku who exist within official material, and probably the strongest ones who will ever exist, unless Daima decides to do something crazy. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. This took a lot of research and time, so I really appreciate it, and as always, thank you so much to the members who got to see this video early and support my channel. And, as always, if you disagree with my takes, let me know how I was wrong in the comments down below. See ya.